Chapter 4. Red Eyes. The whites of the eyes seemed almost painted red. The eyes turned towards their companion. Matsuda Yusuke muttered a question. How long have you been conscious? After blinking for a strangely long time, the person on the bed, super high school level student council president, Marasume Sushun, opened his mouth slowly. His lips were parched and made a dry sound as he opened his mouth. Always. His voice was quiet and hoarse. He sounded like a completely different person in comparison to before. So that's how it's been. Matsuda let a grin creep into his expression. He turned to his friend, showing a friendly smile. But don't you think it's stupid to trick me like that? However, Marasume did not make a sound. His eyes showed no emotion as he stared at Matsuda. Matsuda continued in his joking tone to help calm the tense atmosphere. Must have taken a lot of acting on your part. Your actual physiological symptoms and echoes of such have almost completely disappeared. Yet you were easily able to cease being a normal person. We wouldn't have been in this situation had I not seen through your act. Why did you come? His reply almost came with a violent attitude. As if giving up, Matsuda's expression returned to a more sober look. You said that earlier. You asked those ancient artifacts from the steering committee that. I want you to find out whether you really woke up or not. In response, Marasume only looked away, redirecting his attention to the ceiling and blinking without meaning. To be honest, even I'm having my doubts. Matsuda licked his dry lips before continuing. What if I told those people that you're awake? Marasume remained silent to Matsuda's questioning, like a remote-controlled car with a flat battery. His reactions were slow and sluggish at best. Maybe it isn't just acting. Matsuda breathed out a deep sigh. He just answered his own question. Still, I'm sure the news will surprise them. After that, I already guessed what would happen. Didn't they used to say what people needed to prepare for the worst? Desperate times call for desperate measures. At the moment, they're relying entirely on influential people outside the school to cover up this incident. Matsuda looked away from Marasume and slowly gazed at his surroundings. Instead of looking for some kind of reaction from Marasume, he returned to the surrounding electronic equipment, as if trying to communicate with it. After all, they can't afford to make up excuses for this, like allowing a known threat into the general public. They can't just pretend there's no danger. There are also people who say a ruthless person cannot be a good researcher. Well, not that it matters. It depends on how much talent there is. Matsuda stayed talkative and Marasume didn't even shift an eyebrow. Marasume Sushun used to be the kind of person who would at least pretend to laugh no matter how bad the joke was. It seemed like that man was no longer there. The issue isn't that he's feeling depressed. As Matsuda sighed, he brushed his hair out of his face. His long, narrow eyes looked sharp at Marasume. Oi, Marasume, this isn't a bargaining point, but I do want to tell you. I'm saying this to make sure you understand. The school's intentions and the steering committee's intentions are very different. To be truthful, I don't care what those guys think. I just want to know what the hell is happening at this school. So then I'm just pretending. Marasume suddenly opened his mouth. Matsuda saw him smile. Or maybe he imagined it. In the next moment, any trace of it had completely disappeared. The reaction he just gave him proved that good person was still there. There might be some more to this. Matsuda took off his jacket and untucked his worn-out white shirt, returned to his more familiar appearance. It wasn't because he had become more relaxed. If anything, it was just the opposite. It felt more like he was just getting down to business. I get it. I don't think you'll be able to escape by just using this act. Even though you're in this state, you're still worried about this school, and you're willing to fight for it. That's why you're using this act, so you can escape from the eyes of the steering committee? Matsuda sat down on the bed and leaned in to say something. If I were you, I'd be trying to get used to this kind of power. I'll protect you if I have to. Once I give my false report to those guys, you might even be able to fight along with them, since it's not always that bad to fight alongside the bad guys. Matsuda once again asked how Marasume's condition was, only to see Marasume would not reply or react. No matter what the force behind it is, I still don't know very much about the incident. That's why I need you to survive and explain it to me. But Marasume lowered his eyelids slightly. At the very least, from what Matsuda could gather, his slight movement meant refusal. Matsuda thought this would be the case, but he had a more pressing question. Though he didn't particularly want to hear the answer which may be given, because it was something he had been told before. The culprit is Izuru Kumakura, correct? That was his question. I heard about it from the staff members. The name of the person who survived the incident and then went missing afterwards is called Izuru Kamakura. But does that person really exist? After a short silence, Murasume finally opened his mouth. Izuru Kamakura killed the student council. His voice was hoarse and unused, but he conveys his message. So then, Izuru is real. Matsuda listened for confirmation. However, Murasume didn't reply. His mouth remained open, stiff and unmoving. Oi, Murasume, Matsuda called out, urging him on. The boy's mouth finally moved again. Whatever. He finished saying only that. Matsuda sensed something from his word. So then, that doesn't matter. There was no sense of crisis in the Hope Speak Academy Murasume held on to. So then it isn't a known fact whether Izuru is the culprit behind the incident or not. Matsuda's thoughts went along the lines of, that must be it. There was one more thing Matsuda needed to hear above all else. He had realized. He breathed in heavily, and before giving himself a chance to hesitate, he asked his question. What about Junko Enoshima? What connection does she have to the incident? Murasume closed his eyes. It was a blink that seemed to last forever. The next moment he opened his eyes again. His face was unfamiliar. Tears were threatening to spill from his open eyes. He made a gritting sound with his teeth bared. His crazy expression turned into one of pure exhaustion. Then Matsuda realized. The person named Murasume Sashun was no longer there. The man they called Super High School Level Student Council President was completely gone. The boy who was familiar to him had met his end. The thing opened its mouth painfully wide. He began to spit out words that did not even sound like words. It kills. I must kill. Who? Who are you talking about? Matsuda placed his hands on that thing's bedside and looked down to him as he asked. His huge, red, sore eyes turned towards Matsuda briefly. Enoshima. Junko Enoshima. Inside of his body was beaten by something as he was overtaken by shock. It was the beating of his own heart. The harsh impact had caused Matsuda to lose his own voice. Suddenly, that thing screamed out. Ah! Blood rushed to his face, flushing it to a dark red, making him look like a demon. Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima, Junko Enoshima. The thing continued to scream horribly, sounding like a broken record. Kill, 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 kill. He kept screaming and yelling. Over and over again, he continued to scream. As that thing screamed with his entire body, Matsuda began to feel a little cold. It wasn't that he was composed. That feeling was lost. It was as if his body temperature itself had dropped. He already understood everything. He already understood everything about the worst, largest incident in Hope Speak Academy's history. Murasume Sashun's true enemy and Hope Speak Academy's true enemy was, most likely, Junko Enoshima. That was his conclusion. He had already guessed it as the worst case scenario. Matsuda had no choice but to establish his despairing, inducing resolve. So then, I'm out of options. I passed the point of no return a long time ago. Something around his lower abdomen began to boil and bubble. Still hot, his whole body became energetic. Matsuda turned to Murasume. Hey, I said earlier that I'd protect you if I had to, didn't I? He spoke in a calm tone of voice. But there's also someone I have to protect at all costs. They're hopeless if I don't protect them. So, I decided I'll sacrifice anything to protect them. As the words left his mouth, they were swallowed by screams. Even so, Matsuda continued to talk. I'm awful. I don't particularly want to think about that. If I forgot the person I care for and if they died, that thought is unbearable. So I'll protect them. No matter what happens, I'll protect them. As Matsuda spoke softly, he placed both of his hands around that thing's neck. Kill, 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 kill. Even so, that thing continued to shout. He didn't seem to understand what was happening. If there's a grudge against me for this, then there's a grudge against me. Matsuda closed his eyes and thought to himself, I don't mean that person. I mean I'll hold a grudge against myself. In the next moment, Matsuda gathered all his power into his hands and squeezed. Finally, an incredibly loud noise. The screams of that thing had come to a stop. The bed to which he was assigned started to shake with a loud, rattling sound. Matsuda was leaning forward, his hair falling in front of his eyes. However, he didn't loosen his grip. Instead, he tightened it. He put all his power into his hands. Quickly, the bed's shaking subsided. The feeling of what his hands were wrapped around disappeared. The feeling of that thing ending. After a while, Matsuda finally opened his eyes again. All the muscles in his body felt exhausted and tense, as if he had become a solid piece of iron. Sweat dripped from his forehead, landing on his long eyelashes. He blankly turned his line of sight towards that thing on top of the bed. The light from those eyes had disappeared. All that was left was a deep darkness. Those eyes held a darkness deeper than the color of darkness itself. Chapter 5. In one of the East District's cafeterias, its de facto name is the Third School Cafeteria. Although there are several cafeterias scattered throughout the campus, this is the most popular by far, apparently. During noon, it's filled not only students, but also teaching staff lined up in a queue. It seems the secret behind the popularity of this cafeteria is the student they call Super High School Level Cook, who boasts of his own unique recipe. His food isn't governed by genre or common sense, and I hear it's so addictive you can't help but feel like it must contain drugs, but come to think of it, doesn't really matter since I've forgotten how addicted it is. Well, in any case, even now the student cafeteria is filled with students, so there wasn't a single seat available. For someone like me standing by myself, this atmosphere was anything but comfortable. I'm here too, you know. Did you hear me? I told you, I'm the Super High School level secret agent from the 77th branch. Kamishiro Yuto, come on! How many times do I have to introduce myself? Kamishiro-kun said as he made a cross shape with his arms in front of me. Damn it. It seems like we have had bad chemistry. I was praying to a god a lot that we'd be a good combination. Too bad. What kind of god were you praying to? In any case, it seems Kamishiro-kun and I certainly do have bad chemistry. Forgettable Kamishiro-kun and forgettable me. And forgetful me. He was holding what looked to be a mixture of pale capice and water. Well, whatever. What's more important is starting our conversation. Right, we can do that, but... I looked around at the students bustling through the cafeteria. Why come here of all places? Kamishiro-kun waved his short finger in front of me with a tisk. It's bad taste to answer such a question to an outsider. If anything, this is the perfect place for it. If we talked about this in a place with only a few people, someone must be able to overhear us easily. It's a theory I have that we should hide like we're extras in an adult video. So what you're saying is we need to talk about something important. We should pretend we're having a normal chat? What I'm saying is, it'd be lonely if I was here by myself. Our casual conversation was buried in the sound of the hustle and bustle around us. See? No one cares about our conversation, do they? Kamishiro-kun had a huge grin on his face like he had just committed some fantastic prank. He then moved on to the main topic. There's a reason why I wanted to talk to you as soon as possible. Did anyone go to your room this morning, big sis? Did they? It's fine if you've forgotten. Just check in your notebook. Surprised, I did as I was told, and I took out Ryoko Otonashi's memory notebook and looked through it. I remember in no time at all. I couldn't help but yell out as I remembered. I remember! I know, it was Junko Enoshima. That girl suddenly came into my room. Huh? Kamishiro suddenly leaned forward. So then, that person really was Junko Enoshima. I knew it. Yup. It sounds like that wiretap I put in your room worked perfectly. Huh? Say, Kamishiro-kun? What? What did you just say now? What did you just say just now? Did you say a wiretap? Yeah, I said that. I said wiretap. What about it? A wiretap? Yes, it's a common machine used for eavesdropping. I quickly stood from my chair. How is that normal? I screamed at the top of my lungs. Normal common people don't use those machines. Kamishiro-kun's face was as calm as ever. Let's not rant on about the wiretap. It was a crime prevention. Wiretaps aren't just used to prevent crimes. So you noticed. Clap, 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 as he verbally applauded me. He took out a giant paper bag from under his chair. The boy immediately shoved his hand into the bag and pulled out a sweetbread. Ah, a sugar twist donut. As he cheered out by himself, he happily crammed it into his mouth. That's a little rude. I have no idea what you just said. Kamishiro-kun swallowed down the sweetbread that had just been stuffed into his mouth. I said, I don't want you to misunderstand me. I didn't just wiretap you, big sis. In a broader sense of speaking, I guess I wiretapped around this many people. Kamishiro-kun held up all his fingers. 10 people? He shook his head. 100 people. 100 people? Each finger was to signify a unit of 10 people. You could sit 100 people on an Inaba Manuki shed, no problem. Inaba Manuki seems to be a Japanese storage company. Kimishiro just recited their catchphrase. I was stunned at the unexpected amount of people he counted. He continued to explain the reason why. The reason is, I rotate between girls a lot basically. That way I can have fun with you when best suits you with the time of month. I guess that's why I like heavy rotation so much. He puffed out his chest. No, that doesn't matter. In any case, how did you manage to wiretap 100 people's rooms? It's easy with my ability. Seeking in places like the girls' toilets or their dressing rooms is a piece of cake. Do something else with that piece of cake. Making it nice and creamy, with extra cream. This is all pretty confusing in English, but he says doing things before breakfast in Japanese, which is like saying it's a piece of cake. So Arunashi tells him to do something else before breakfast. He then says something is growing, but I've heard the word he said can be used for ejaculation. This is already getting out of hand. The hand, the leg, the head, the back. It's getting out of everything. Let bygones be bygones. The boy wiped away his problems with a simple phrase and started talking about a different subject. When you big sisters are in a room, you sure are noisy, aren't you? Because of that, I could barely hear any of the conversations. So why did Junko Enoshima come visit you? She came because she had an errand for you to run, didn't she? As he said that, he took out another sweetbread. Oh, a cub's paw made in Germany. He looked like he was tasting a rare delicacy as he munched on it. Well that's... My eyes dropped down to my notebook as I answered him. It seems she came to give me a hint. A hint? I flipped through my notebook. Junko Enoshima's purpose... Kamishiro-kun looked surprised at my words. Tell me in more detail. What did Junko Enoshima say her purpose was? Kamishiro-kun asked with a more forceful voice. I read aloud my memories from my notebook, also feeling very tense. It seems like Junko Enoshima has two purposes. The first is to crush Izuru Kamakura until nothing is left. Do you know what that means? Keep going, he coldly prompted. I looked down to my notebook. The second is... I read on ahead a little and was shocked by what I read. It was as if someone had killed me by pounding my spine with a hammer. I felt a sudden, intense shock surge through my entire body. Big sis? What the hell? It says, kill your beloved darling, Matsuda Yusuke. As soon as I said it, my brain felt like it was having a nuclear meltdown. My surroundings began to rock from side to side. It wasn't an earthquake. I, myself, was the one shaking. My head felt hot, unavoidably so. Only my body was cold. I was stricken by the less familiar feelings of fear and anger all at once. I was shaking violently for reasons I could not understand. Calm down, big sis. The inside of my head was numb with fear. There was a voice echoing quietly. I was brought back to my senses to find Kamishiro-kun saying something to me. The kill has to be a bluff. There's no way a person could kill so lightly. If she really planned to kill him, she wouldn't bother declaring it to you until long after murdering him, right? That would be true. I know that. But I can't stop my body from shaking. You're right. There's no way she'd kill him. My voice was shaking so much, I almost couldn't form a single word. In the meantime, it might be better for you to just not say anything until you calm down, he said lazily as he gulped down the bread in his hand. Instead, you should listen to my reasoning from now on, he announced loudly. Okay, let's get a move on then. Kimishiro-kun suddenly straightened his posture enthusiastically, and he started the reasoning part. Firstly, there's the problem of the advance notice of Matsuda Yusuke's death that you're so worried about. I suppose that's a bluff. I mean, there's no sense in telling others about a murder you have yet to commit. She may have been using it as a threat, but that's also unlikely. It's definitely a bluff. For now, that's our understanding of it, but we should be more wary of the girl's first purpose. Junko Enoshima's first purpose. That's certainly... No, even so. Crushing Izuru Kamakura until nothing is left is... Honestly, even if I was a little surprised, it's too much of a coincidence. I didn't think I'd hear Izuru's name. Who's that? Did you ask who's that person? Kimishiro-kun patted his chest with his hand. They're the culprit. The boy leaned forward over the table and spoke in an excited voice. I was surprised, since Izuru is the culprit behind the worst largest incident in Hope Peak Academy's history. Eh? The culprit behind the worst, largest incident in Hope Peak Academy's history? Speaking of which, what is the worst, largest incident in Hope Peak Academy's history? I tilted my head to the side. Wait, I can tell by your reaction that you don't remember. Kimishiro huffed and pouted. It's important to show off my deductions to other big sisters, but from now on, I should expect your reaction when I tell you my reasoning. Kimishiro-kun really did look bored as he exhaled deeply. Then he began to talk again. When I told you the other day, you didn't remember them either, but you didn't even bother to ask me whether the worst, largest incident in Hope Peak Academy history really happened or not, did you? But now I can say that with more confidence. Kimishiro-kun clicked his fingers right in front of my eyes. The worst, largest incident in Hope Peak Academy's history. Izuru is the culprit behind the incident. He wore a proud expression as he declared it. After a while of wearing that expression, he spoke again. That wasn't the reaction I was waiting for. He said his one-sided excuses as I tried to regain my composure. The reason as to why I believe this is the case is also why I called this meeting. Kimishiro leaned over to face my ear and whispered in a small voice, "Actually, I overheard a conversation between faculty members." Overheard? Somehow that filled me with a sense of dread. The people having the conversation were on school campus, but they seemed to be very careful. They didn't mind spilling out all of their complaints when in their own private rooms, though.
Hope will never die!